Welcome to What's Happening Now on KBLKRadio.com, and thank you for tuning in. This is your host, Bishop Bowser, and we have an exciting show for you today, and everyone should be listening. So right now, I want you to text or call 7 people and tell them to tune in to this week's show. So right now, I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, this morning, we're going to have a good one because we have Alonzo Harvey and Anthony Spittle with us as our special guest today. And our topic for this morning is ending unfair prison sentences and the overcriminalization of communities of color. So if you want to call in and join this conversation once we begin it, you can call us at 619-919-4745. Again, to call in and join this conversation, you can call in at 619-919-4745. And so we're going to be talking about the ending unfair prison sentences and the overcriminalization of communities of color. And so when we talk about communities of color, we're talking about what is rooted in racism. And when we look at systemic racism today, it is composed of intersecting, overlapping, and codependent racist institutions, policies, practices, ideas, and behaviors. As such, it is a theory that accounts for individual, institutional, and structural forms of racism. Systemic here means that the core racist realities are manifested in each of society's major parts. Each major part of U.S. society is the economy, politics, education, religion, and the family. And these reflect the fundamental realities of systemic racism. Now, our minds do not suddenly decide that all are bad when we have seen that one is bad when we talk about these very institutions. But contrary to what many seem to believe, any negative interaction that we've had with someone from any given group is backed up by what we've been taught systemically throughout our lives. And a lot of folks have been taught to continue to perpetuate and practice systemic racism. And that's why you see it in our policies and our laws and so on. So the vast majority of convicted offenders will be discriminated against legally for the rest of their lives. They will be denied employment, housing, education, and public benefits. Unable to surmount these obstacles, systemic racism occurs when the way a society is structured systemically ends up giving advantages to some and disadvantages to others. Now, as a part of prison reform, it is to reduce the length of prison sentences, limit prosecution power, and create a more humane prison system. That's what prison reform is all about, to reduce the length of prison sentences, limit prosecution power, and create a more humane prison system. Now, I was looking at a gentleman by the name of Bill Quigley, and he wrote an article on that's entitled "A Seriously Racist Criminal Justice System." And in the following article, Bill Quigley gives 14 examples of racism in the criminal justice system. And so let's look at some of these, and we're going to go through as many as we can. But the first one he talks about, number one, the U.S. has seen a surge in arrests and putting people in jail over the last 4 decades. Most of the reason is the war on drugs, right? Yet whites and blacks engage in drug offenses, possession, and sales at roughly comparable rates. According to a report on race and drug enforcement published by Human Rights Watch in May of 2008, while African Americans comprise 13% of the U.S. population and 14% of monthly drug users, they are 37% of people arrested for drug offenses. According to the 2009 congressional testimony by Mark Maurer of the Sentencing Project. That's number one when you look at a racist system. Number two, the police stops blacks and Latinos at rates that are much higher than whites. Now, they gave an example in New York City, where people of color make up about half of the population. 80% of NYPD stops were blacks and Latinos. When whites were stopped, only 8% were frisked. When blacks and Latinos are stopped, 85% were frisked, according to information provided by the New York Police Department. The same is true most other places as well. In a California study, the ACLU found blacks are 3 times more likely to be stopped than whites. So when you have that, that is a over policing of our communities, where if everybody is using drugs at an equal percentage, when you look at races, why is the people of color like Latinos and blacks and Asians are being over policed and therefore criminalizing our communities versus other communities? So the third thing he talked about was, he said, since 1970, drug arrests have skyrocketed, rising from 320,000 to close to 1.6 million, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics of the U.S. Department of Justice. He said African Americans are arrested for drug offenses at rates 2 to 11 times higher than the rate for whites, according to a May 2009 report on disparity in drug arrests by Human Rights Watch. Number 4, once arrested, blacks are more likely to remain in prison awaiting trial than whites. For example, the New York State Division of Criminal Justice did a 1995 review on disparities in processing felony arrests and found that in some parts of New York, blacks are 33% more likely to be detained awaiting felony trials than whites facing felony trials. Number 5, the fifth point he made, he says, once arrested, 80% of people in the criminal justice system get public defenders for their lawyer. Race plays a big role here as well. Stop in any urban courtroom and look at the color of the people who are waiting for public defenders. Despite often heroic efforts by public defenders, the system gives them much more work and much less money than the prosecution. The American Bar Association, not a radical bunch, reviewed the U.S. public defender system in 2004 and concluded all too often defendants plead guilty, even if they are innocent, without really understanding their legal rights, or what is occurring. The fundamental right to a lawyer that America assumes applies to everyone accused of criminal conduct effectively does not exist in practice for countless people across the U.S. Number 6, he says African Americans are frequently illegally excluded from criminal jury service, according to a June 2010 study released by the Equal Justice Initiative. And I see that myself in the criminal justice system, whether it's federal or going downtown to the courthouse. You don't see blacks on the jury in the jury pool or on the jury stand. And he goes on to say, for example, in Houston County, Alabama, 8 out of 10 African Americans qualified for jury service have been struck by prosecutors from serving on death penalty cases. Number 7, he says trials are rare. Only 3 to 5% of criminal cases go to trial. The rest are plea bargain. Most African American defendants never get a trial. Most plea bargains consist of promise of a longer sentence if a person exercises their constitutional right to trial. As a result, people caught up in the system, as the American Bar Association point out, plead guilty even when innocent. Why? As one young man, and this is quickly saying, told me recently, who wouldn't rather do 3 years for a crime they didn't commit than risk 25 years for a crime they didn't do? Especially in the federal courts, I believe 90-some% of their cases, they win. And so when you look at that and you say, I'm innocent, but they got me, you might as well make a plea bargain if you can get out of it. Well, you shouldn't do that, but that's the way the system forces you to do. Number 8, he says the U.S. Sentencing Commission reported in March of 2010 that in the federal system, black offenders receive sentences that are 10% longer than white offenders for the same crimes. Mark Maurer of the Sentencing Project reports African Americans are 21% more likely to receive mandatory minimum sentences than white defendants, and 20% more likely to be sentenced to prison than white drug offenders. Number 9, he says, the longer the sentence, the more likely it is that non-white people will be the ones getting it. A July 2009 report for the Sentencing Project found that 2/3 of the people in the U.S. with life sentences are non-white. In New York, it is 83%. So number 10, he says, as a result, African Americans, who are 13% of the population and 14% of drug users, are not only 37% of people arrested for drugs, but 56% of the people in state prisons for drug offenses. And that comes from his report, Mark Meyer report, May 2009 congressional testimony for the Sentencing Project. All right, number 11. The U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics conclude that the chance of a black male born in 2001 of going to jail is 32%, or 1 in 3. Latino males have a 17% chance, and white males have a 6% chance. Thus, black boys are 5 times, and Latino boys nearly 3 times as likely as white boys to go to jail. Number 12, he says, so while African Americans juvenile youth is but 16% of the population, they are 28% of juvenile arrests, 37% of youth in juvenile jails, and 58% of youth sent to adult prisons. And that's a report from 2009 Criminal Justice Primer, the Sentencing Project. Number 13, remember that the U.S. leads the world in putting our own people into jail and prison. The New York Times reported in 2009 that the U.S. has 5% of the world's population, but a quarter, that's 25% of the world's prisoners. Over 2.3 million people behind bars, dwarfing our other nations. The U.S. rate of incarceration is 5 to 8 times higher than other highly developed countries, and black males are the largest percentage of inmates, according to ABC News. 14. Even when released from prison, race continued to dominate. A study by Professor Diva Pager of the University of Wisconsin found that 17% of white job applicants with criminal records receive callbacks from employers, while only 5% of black job applicants with criminal records receive callback. Race is so prominent in that study that whites with criminal records actually receive better treatment than blacks without a criminal record. And so we see that in this criminal justice system, it is most definitely systemically racism going on. And, you know, it doesn't matter who's in power, whether it's a black person, brown person, Asian, white, or whatever. If you're a part of the system, you are enforcing racist policies. And so in order to change systems, we have to reform it and change it so that it works better and good for all. And that's why we are fighting these enhancement sentences, because that's where they get most of us at. And when a judge is looking at 2 people and have to decide, one is black, one is white, or one is a person of color, and one is white, most of the time the person that is white is going to get lesser time. And so then when laws come out, or when propositions and bills come out that we need to get passed in order to make the criminal justice system more fairer, you have a lot of people out there that is a part of systemic racism and wants to be the pioneer of leading and heading the way for fighting against these things. And so that's why you find, especially in people of color in the black community, that they have big issues with law enforcement. Because not only do they over-police our community, therefore criminalizing our community, but also the police unions, the police officer associations, the sheriff's association, district attorneys association, police chiefs associations. All these law enforcement associations are the ones that are fighting against criminal justice reform. Anytime a proposition or a bill comes up, they threaten, they intimidate politicians to not to support the bill, because for some reason they want folks to remain in prison. For some reason they want jobs on the street so they could continue to over-police our communities. So we have to get out there and fight. We have to get involved to change this system. And so we have a couple of minutes left, and so I want to introduce to you Alonzo Harvey and Anthony Spittle before we go into this break. And welcome to the show, Mr. Harvey and Mr. Spittle.
How you doing?
Hi.
All right. So, Mr. Harvey, how old are you?
I'm 29 years old.
29 years old. And how old are you, Anthony, Mr. Adam Spittle?
16.
Anthony Spittle. How old?
16.
16. Wow, man, you youngster. And caught up in the system already, huh? Yeah, all right. So, we got about a minute left before we take our break, but Mr. Harvey, can you tell us, give us a little bit about what community that you're a part of?
Well, I'm from I represent a number of communities. As a matter of fact, I'm representing the Black and Brown community, who are criminally criminalized for being communities of color. But I'm from District 4, Southeast San Diego, and I'm here to just talk about the unjust system that has been criminalized in our community. Yeah, that's
All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we're going to come right back in a moment. Stay tuned to kblkradio.com, and we'll be right back after these brief commercials.
Best R&B plus weekend talk, KBLK, San Diego.
Welcome back to What's Happening Now on kblkradio.com, and thank you for staying with us. And we most definitely would like to encourage you, if you want to call in, you can call in at 619-919-4745. Again, if you want to call in, you can call in at 619-919-4745. Now, Mr. Anthony Spittle. Mr. Spittle here. What community you live in?
I live in Mira Mesa.
Oh, okay. How long you lived out there?
My whole life.
Your whole life? Mira Mesa, that's north of the 8, man. You mean they got gangs out there?
Yeah.
What gangs they got out there?
It's just like regular Bloods and Crips gang,
Bloods and Crips?
Yeah.
What's the most predominant gang out there?
I wouldn't know.
You would know.
I wouldn't have no say on that.
Oh, you would have no say on that. I hear you on that one. Now, I want to ask each of you, Mr. Alonzo, Miss Harvey, you can go first. Are you documented as a gang member?
Yes, I've been as far as I know, I've been documented since I was the age of 17.
Man,
Without knowing.
As far as you know.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when did you find out?
I actually didn't find out until I actually went to prison in 2009. I had caught a little case, and during my case, my lawyer never said anything. I never really knew until I went to prelims right before I signed my deal. I had happened to get what they call a gang enhancement, and that was finally revealed to me that a gang enhancement was part of my charge. And
Now, can you tell us what you mean by gang enhancement?
so what a gang enhancement is what they do is they document gang members, where they document the Black and Brown community, and without letting you know. And the only time that you really can find out is if you ever go before the courts. So what they do is they say that it's only gang enhancements only used with a gang crime, which is not true, because I went to prison for pandering, and had nothing to do with gangs. But they still added a gang enhancement because I'm a documented gang member. So that gang enhancement added another 2 years per charge. I had 2 counts, and they added 2 years on both counts.
So how much time did you get for it?
I ended up doing 3 years, 3.5 years. So they gave me 6.5 years, and I did half time. But they gave me 6. The charge only actually covered 2 years without the gang enhancements. But because I'm a documented gang member, is what they say, they added a 2-year gang enhancement on each charge.
So let me dive into this a little bit. When you talk about enhancements and when you talk about pandering, can you tell us what pandering is?
Well, pandering is like a form of what they say is like a form of pimping. So what it was is that's a whole nother story. But yeah, my pandering was just receiving money from somebody that was working. So they didn't really charge me with pimping. They just charged me with pandering. So it was like I was receiving money from somebody that was a female that was out there.
Okay.
Which had nothing to do with gangs. Once again, it was pretty much us doing it, and they still added a gang enhancement to it.
And so was that a violent felony conviction?
No, not non-violent. It was a non-violent crime. They actually could have just sent me. I could have did county time, but the fact that I was a documented gang member, they sent me straight to prison. That was the first time I've ever been incarcerated.
Wow. Wait a minute. Let's back up here a little bit. Now you're telling me that if you were not documented as a gang member, you would have done county time.
I would have done county time. I would have did 1.5 years in the county. But the fact that I was a documented gang member, they shot me straight to prison. Like I said, this was the first time I've ever been incarcerated.
Right. And, the thing of it is that what people don't know, because, Mayor Kevin Faulconer came out in opposition to a proposition which is called Prop 57, which would reform the criminal justice system a little bit more in enhancement sentences, that if people demonstrate that they have rehabilitated their lives and took advantage of educational programs in prison, once they get those programs in there, that once they complete that primary sentence without the enhancements, they could go up for the possibility of getting parole.
Right.
And one of the things that he came out and said is, oh, you're going to let violent offenders out, and you're going to let people who's involved in human trafficking. I'm sure pandering would tie into that law under human trafficking. And he tried to make it seem like that's a horrible thing in the sense of because you're getting out because you completed your time.
Right.
But the thing that they don't talk about is that you could have, for that same crime, you could have did county time.
Yes.
I know people that I know that have actually was pimping. And the young lady went and testified against them, and they made a deal, and they ended up getting only a few months,
Right.
and so on. So when people try to like dramatize and try to make it seem as worse than what the situation is, now we shouldn't be doing these things, and whether sex trafficking or human trafficking,
Right.
pandering, all that, we shouldn't do those things. But the issue here is about fairness,
Right.
and that's the issue that we're addressing: is treat people of color communities fair versus the way we are treated.
Right.
Because if it would happen in to a white person, a white community, they probably just got county time,
Exactly.
if not just probation.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And so that's where we're talking about the unfairness, and I'm really surprised by all these folks, law enforcement, district attorneys, all these people opposing this bill.
Right.
And so on, when all we're trying to do is reform, to just and what it is, they don't want to lose power.
Exactly.
And what it is that this
money.
keeps them a
More
job.
money.
That's right. That's right. So you ended up doing 3 years.
Yeah, I ended up doing 3.5 years on that, which was like once again non-violent. What it was they scared me. There was really no evidence based. They didn't have anything. What it was my first time being incarcerated. I had my public defender was conflict inflicted counsel, however you call that. She didn't represent me the right way. So
incompetent counsel.
Yeah, exactly. So what it was they just scared me. They told me, if my lawyer actually told me during prelims that if I didn't sign this deal that I was going to end up doing 13 years. So
Wow.
my first time ever being incarcerated, and I got a kid who's now 9 years old, and at that time he was 2. So I wanted to get home to my son. So of course, what most blacks do, what they do is, especially your documented gang member, but she actually told me, well, Mr. Harvey, you're a documented gang member. I don't see us winning this case. And that's exactly what she told me right before prelims. Yeah. So the first thing I did was sign a deal, and that's what most people do. They scare you with all these enhancements and these big time deals. I mean, these big time sentences. And come to find out, now that I'm starting to learn the law because I'm going to school to be a lawyer, that charge didn't even carry 13 years, so I don't even know where they got that number at. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I signed. Like I said, it could have been county time if I was an undocumented gang member, but I signed. They scared me into signing, and that's what most people do.
Wow. Now, when we talk about communities of color, we know black and brown is affected most, but we also see the Asian community also affected, and Mr. Spittle here is part of the Asian community out in Mira Mesa, and he's 16 years old. Now, are you documented as a gang member?
Yeah, yes.
What gang do they have you documented with?
They have me documented as Asian Crips.
And are you a gang member?
No.
So, how old were you when you were documented?
Probably like when I was 14.
Whoa, wow, 14? Man, now, how did you find out that you were documented as a gang member?
Some detectives came to my house unrelated, but they just told me out of nowhere that I was documented.
You didn't even know it?
Yeah, I did not know. They didn't even interview me for it or anything.
Right, now, why did they come to your house?
Oh, it was for something else, like something happened around our neighborhood, and asking questions if we heard anything, witnesses.
And then when they came to your house, why did they bring up subject about being in the gang?
I think they just wanted to let my mom know that, so like
that you were documented.
Yeah, so just in case ahead of time something happens.
So that was like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Wow, and thank God there's a law that's passed now to where at least they have to send a letter if you're a juvenile to your parent and let you know that you're going to be documented. So, but that happened before then, and what they did is they just documented you. They said, oh, by the way, you're documented as a gang member. And then as we saw heard from Mr. Harvey, you could be here as a young man, 16 years old, but documented as 14 years old. And if he happened to go out there and commit a crime, he can actually, based on the gang enhancement laws, he could have got some enhancement laws with not even knowing that he's documented and he's not a gang member. Might have some friends and different things like that. You have any friends that are gang members?
Yes, I do.
And they live in your community?
Yeah.
People you grew up with?
Yeah.
And a lot of them probably go to the same school you go to.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. So and so that's part of the problem is that a lot of times we find our youth are being documented as gang members because their friends are banging, and that's not fair. That's not fair, especially when you're doing your own thing and they just happen to be friends that you grew up with, and they doing something. You might even be encouraging them not to do this. Exactly. Hey, man, exactly. That stuff, man, leave that stuff alone, man. And don't do that around me, man. Don't be tripping like that around me. But then if I get stopped with that individual, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to, start documenting me, saying, okay, first stop, he's with a gang member and so on. And that's one of the things that I really want to get into, because this is crazy. But Mr. Spittle, also, I know that not only are you documented as a gang member with the Asian Crips, but have you been arrested and convicted of any crimes?
With them? Or being with them?
For anything?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have.
What were you arrested for?
Like having marijuana on me, or that one.
Having marijuana on you, and did you get in trouble for that? Did you get any time, anything like that?
Oh no, I just got I think they let me off. Yeah, no, I got probation. And it's called diversion probation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got that.
Okay, so and have you been in trouble for anything else?
Maybe more like resisting arrest, a couple other charges.
What, when you say a couple other charges, can you name one or two?
Alcohol, trespassing, curfew.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Have you ever been in juvenile hall before?
Yes.
For what? What crime was that for?
I think it was because they're resisting arrest.
Oh, and they took you to juvenile hall. How long were you in the hall?
Like a month and a half.
A month and a half. Just for resisting arrest.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, you were documented as a gang member.
Yes, I saw.
And so when you got out, or before you got locked up, were you on probation?
No, I was not on probation before I got locked up.
But after the resisting arrest, when you got out,
yeah, then they put me on probation.
And were you on regular probation, or were you on gang supervision?
I was on gang suppression unit.
Gang suppression unit. Wow. And they put you under that and how old were you then? 14, 15?
I think I just turned 15, or I was 14.
Just turn and so under the gang suppression unit of probation, what did they do, or what was your experience with them?
There'd be like constant raids at my house, like violating my stuff, throwing it all over.
Now, see, this is crazy. And you see how Mr. Spittle, young man, 16 years old, look at it, say raiding his house. Right. It's not what this probation is supposed to be doing is a compliance check. Mm-hmm. Just coming to your house, making sure you're there. You're not violating whatever the court orders were, and so on. But they come and like raid your house like you're a big time drug dealer or some kind of killer or something or whatever. So it's so. How, with them coming to your house and raiding your house, how did that affect your family?
Like I wouldn't say like it traumatized my family, but it'll like make us like keep us on our toes, because they can come in whenever they want, as long as it's not past 10 o'clock. They can just come in and do whatever they want to, and just do their check.
And when you say do whatever they want, give us an example. What you mean by that?
They're allowed to search their entire house. Well, not like the entire house. Whoever's on probation side of the house goes to, like in the bathroom, they can search there. If you go in the kitchen, living room, they'll search everywhere. But they apparently they say they can't search your parents' rooms, but they still ask if it's unlocked, or try to go in there, or like just try to say some lies to get into it.
Right, and thank you for saying that, because I know one of the things that they do is, and I talked with your mom about this because she was upset that they, went in a room and holster bang. But what they say is that, oh, we're just doing a security check, make sure that nobody is in there with, that would be a threat to their life or whatever, trying to make sure everything is safe. But at the same time of doing that, they're in your room searching, looking around. They might not what we call that, Mr. Harvey. I know your brother Aaron had talked about that, those pat down searches.
Oh, yeah.
On your car. They're not only pat down you. Now, police stop anybody. They can pat them down for make sure they don't have no weapons, but they don't supposed to search you for anything.
Exactly.
And they'll pat down. They'll do the same thing with a pat down in your car, and they'll come in your house and in your room and do a pat down of your room.
Right.
But they really not just searching for weapons, but they search for anything criminal or anything that they can get you on, which is a violation of your civil rights, a violation of your constitutional rights. And that's the real issue that we're talking about here, is that folks' constitutional rights are being violated up and down when we look at these laws and how they are enforced, whether it's probation, whether it's enhancement laws, and so on. And so it's just a complete criminalizing of the community. And when like someone like Mr. Spittle or Mr. Harvey get on probation, it puts the whole house on probation. Everybody is serving time because they can come to your house anytime, and it's embarrassing when they come with 8 and 9 or 6 or how many ever officers they come to your house and flooding your house and got their guns drawn and everything, like you're a murderer or committed some kind of crime or what have you, and it's supposed to be just a compliance check and so on. But remember, in this system, they get funding for that. They get money to come out and do these things, so they got to do them to keep money and to keep jobs and so on. But at the same time, they're terrorizing our community and terrorizing our young people and families. And you said, you're not going to say traumatized, but no, it traumatized.
Yeah.
That's traumatized the whole family. Then that turns everyone in the house, gives them a bitter taste in their mouth about law enforcement, which you shouldn't have, because there are some good officers out there. But as we was talking the other day, just because if there's some good officers out there, then we say shame on you because you're not speaking out and you're not saying anything, and you are probably cover up for that dirty officer. And so whatever he's doing that is wrong, whether you shoot somebody or mistreat somebody or whatever else, you guys back each other up. And you guys are not exposing that. And whenever a police officer, like the black police officer, came out and told them be careful, or the white officer out the key, now they're investigating him.
Right.
And so what other black officer is going to do that, or person of color, Latino or Asian officer is going to do that, and then they become a target by somebody in an investigation because they see and they know what's going on out there. And so I want to move on here, and I want to talk about the community, because I noticed, Miss Spittle, I'll start with you first. I noticed, like, when I used to pick up you and your brother and drop you guys off, even today when I was coming to your house to pick you up, I see a lot of law enforcement. Sometimes I see a lot of gang unit. Why is there a lot of gang unit officers out there?
Usually they come to me and my brother's house to do checks, like check in with us. Most of the time it's home soup, because my brother's been home soup a couple times, and I have been too. And they'll just check up to see what we're doing and stuff, make sure we're home, make sure we're not out doing anything that we're not supposed to do.
Now, what about, in the community, in the streets? Because I know sometimes I can be just driving down the street, not even at your house, but somewhere else in Mira Mesa, and I see these gang units. Do you see a lot of gang unit officers out there?
There are a lot of gang units and traffic officers around here. I'm not sure why.
But they're out there and they're doing the Duke and so on. So, Mr. Harvey, I know a lot of times that when I'm driving back and forth, especially Southeast and District 4, and going to your grandmother's house and different places, I know I see a lot of gang unit officers that are out. One of the things that I know that I've gotten from black community, the Latino community, and the Asian community is that one of the things they're saying is that, we don't have any problem with the regular patrol officers, but it's the special units like the gang unit that is part of the problem of the ones that are stopping, harassing, and over-policing the community. How do you see it?
Well, that's exactly true. I mean, when you got 543 documented gang members in Lincoln Park alone, the officers, whether it be a new recruit or a person that's been on that beat from GSU, they have this perception that every black man there, with those numbers, every black man in Southeast San Diego is a documented gang member. So that over-policing is what they're used to. They don't consider over-policing. They consider it, well, I'm going to pull over a documented gang member, so we got to be safe. Mind me, in Southeast San Diego, ain't nobody pulling out guns or drawing down on the police officers. That's happening elsewhere.
Right.
So what they do is they want to criminalize our culture and our communities by doing so. So for a regular routine traffic stop, they'll have 4 or 5 officers pulling people over.
Wow.
You know, so they do that. That's harassment. You know what I mean? That's a racist system. Every officer that I've seen on GSU has been black, bald head. You know, so if I gave my perception, to me they look like skinheads. You know, so if we look like gang members, they look like skinheads. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, they've been doing this since. I mean, like I said, my grandma been living over there in Lincoln Park. My mom and my dad actually grew up on Logan since the 60s. So my whole entire generation's family's been living over there, and I've been going through this my whole entire life. Of harassment, you know, constantly. You know.
Wow. And how many times have you been stopped?
Honestly, I wish I knew the exact number, but I know for a fact I've been stopped over 50 times, and I've actually got my my I don't know what it's called. I guess it's like a cow gang stop record or whatever it is. But I've actually seen my list, and I've been stopped over 50 times just in a 2-block radius of my grandma's house on Logan. So I've been stopped in my own neighborhood over 50 times with no tickets.
Wow.
They were considered gang stops.
Wow. And that's the thing, you know, and we talk about this many times on our show, you know, the pretext stop, you know, what they call it, and the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of law enforcement to be able to do that. And basically what they'll do is they'll follow you until you make a traffic violation, whether it's going beyond the line, and sometimes they'll lie. I've had people say they told me that my tail light was out, and I checked it wasn't out. Right. They told me that I was going too fast, or I crossed the line, or I didn't put on my blinker sign when I turned. But the objective, they're not pulling you over to give you a ticket. And trust me, if it's one of these special units, you're not going to get a ticket. But what is going to happen is that they're trying to find something. Because now, don't get it wrong, sometimes they have done those things and they have probably stopped the drive-by shooting from happening. They actually stopped gang members with guns and gloves and they're what they call thing to put over their head, the ski masks and all those type of things, where it looked like, hey man, these dudes about ready to go do something. And so, but the thing that I always say is that real policing, when you're really doing your job, you know how to identify that. Is every young black male that's not identifying, just pulling them over and just assuming that they're a gang member, assuming that they're here to go do a drive-by or selling drugs or doing something illegal in the car. You know, give these young black men and brown men and Asian men a benefit of the doubt. And real policing would know who's gang members, who's not, and who's really up to no good, and who is up to no good, and who isn't up to any good. You know, when I used to be involved in the gang lifestyle, the officers, they knew me.
Right.
And they knew I was banging. They knew I was up to no good. They were angry that they couldn't catch me on a lot of stuff and so on. And so they was out to get me, which was rightly so. Back then I didn't like it. But when I think back now, I know that, hey, yes, they should have been stopping me and harassing me and checking me every time they see me, because I might have had a gun on me or whatever. Right. But there's a lot of people that in the community that are not doing it. It's only a small percentage of folks in the community that are participating in criminal activity and violent behavior. A small percentage. Right. And so when you look at that small percentage that is out there doing that, sometimes what they do is they overcriminalize our community. Then when you look in the white community or look in upper class communities, they're not doing that. Right. And that's the problem. And they're probably doing some of the same things that our youth are doing. Whether it's like Mr. Spittle said, he has some marijuana on. Who don't have some marijuana on? Right. You know, when you're talking about these youngsters, I don't care what school you go, La Jolla, you go anywhere. I guarantee you, you stop them and check their backpack, you're gonna find some marijuana.
They're the ones that got it.
Exactly. So now I was looking at this, and you know, when they talk about under the STEP Act, the STEP Act is the Street Terrorism Enforcement Prevention Act, which deals with gang enhancements and documenting gang members and things like that. And so a criminal street gang means any ongoing organization, association, or group of 3 or more persons, whether formal or informal, having as one of its primary activities the commission one. See, it says having as one of its primary activities the commission of one or more of the criminal acts enumerated in the. They have like a list of 33 gang crimes, and we're not going to read all of those, but 33 gang crimes. If a person is involved in one of those, and then they also have a common name or common identifying sign or symbol whose members individually or collectively engage in or have engaged in a pattern of criminal activity. And that's how they define a gang. But I'm wondering why these fraternities are not defined as gangs then, because they have their organization. They have 3 or more people. And one of their primary activities is selling drugs, smoking drugs, and doing some other illegal things within those fraternities. And if they were to raid them and put them under surveillance, they'd come find out. But they're not documented gaming. They give hand signs and signals and the whole shebang. And you don't see them criminalizing them. But when you look at them taking pictures on Facebook or anywhere else, you will see that. You will see them putting them signs like they banging. What they doing there? Right. You know. So it's real crazy. And so one of the things I want to talk about here, because I think this is where what people don't really understand is how a person can be identified as a gang member. Mm-hmm. And it's based on a 10-point gang validation criteria that the Cal gang come up with. And what they say is when 2 of the following criteria are found through an investigation and coupled with officers' training expertise, they can document you. But in San Diego, the police will say they're not just going to use 2, but they'll use 3. So it makes it a little bit more harder, but all it does is take one more stop. Yeah. So it's really not something real significant there. But here is the thing. They say the only single criteria approved for entry is an in-custody jail classification interview, where a person admit that they're gang members, things like that.
And that's a setup.
Yeah, exactly. So here's some of the things that they talk about, and when we talk about enhancements and criminalizing the community and so on, this is one of the ways they do it, because when you're documented as a gang member, what they're saying is that if they look at you as a gang member and they say that you are involved, they have a suspicion that you are involved in criminal activity, even though you may not be even a gang member, but just some of your friends are. But now they put you on a criminal investigation whenever you're documented as a gang member. And here's some of the things that they can do. Of course, somebody has admitted that they're a gang member. Now, if a person admitted and understand what they're doing and what they're saying, then you sure enough going to be documented. And that's your fault if you admitted to something like that.
Right.
Don't blame nobody else.
Right.
If you said that you were banging and you down for your set and so on. But then they have another one where it says subject has been arrested with known gang members for offenses consistent with gang activity. Now I want to ask you guys, do you think that is fair for them to do that and to consider you a gang member just because you might be with your cousin?
Right. And I have been. And went to jail for being with my cousin.
Oh, well, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, my cousin, his name is Dion Winters. He's actually a first cousin. My mom and his dad is brothers and are brothers and sisters. And one day we was going to a friend's house, and we were both on parole, and we got pulled over. I pulled over, not thinking nothing of it, and the first thing they said was, "You guys aren't supposed to be together," as if they knew us. And
wow.
I didn't know what was going on, so. They got on the phone and called one of the gang detectives, and next thing you know, we was in jail. I ended up doing 10 days. My dad actually ended up calling my parole officer's supervisor, and they ended up getting me out after the 10th day. But
this after you got out of prison?
Yeah. This what I ended up doing. Yeah, I was already out, so I ended up doing 10 days in the county. They called it a gang violation, and my dad actually went to the supervisor, and they ended up getting me out for 10 days. With my cousin Dion actually did 30 days, and we're cousins.
And
we're literally
just
cousins.
because you guys are together, was he on probation?
Together. Yeah, he was on probation, but we're first cousins. How could we not be together?
Yeah, that should be something that should be allowed.
That should be allowed.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and here is another thing, another problem that I find with this is with being documented gang member. When you have done time for something that you've done or whatever, they put, not only do they put these restrictions on you that you can't be with anybody that's documented as a gang member, whether they're banging or not. Like if you're on parole and Mr. Spittle here is on parole, he documented as Mayor Mesa gang member, but he's not even a gang member.
Right.
You know, they just documented him as such.
Right.
But you two can't be together because he's documented as gang member, you're documented as gang member, and you may be on parole. That may be one of your conditions.
Right.
Then another thing they do is injunctions. When they tell you can't go into certain communities, I don't want to see you over here. So what they do is the community that you grew up with, the community that you familiar with, the community that you're safe in, they're telling you can't be there.
Right.
And so now you got to go somewhere else where you open up for anything,
Right.
and so on. And so they put injunctions on people where they can't even live in their own communities, which is wrong and a violation of a person's constitutional right. Now, Mr. Spittle, have you ever been stopped with guys that were in gangs? How did they? You know, if you're not a gang member and you got documented as a gang member, how did that happen?
How did I get documented?
Yeah, I mean, because if you're not a gang member, why did they think you were?
I got pulled over like 1 or 2 times before I got documented with some gang members I was just hanging out with.
Mm-hmm. And why were you hanging out with them?
Oh, just I knew my whole life. I grew up with them.
Your friends.
Yeah.
Right. It's so you see how crazy that is. And so when they talk about one of the criteria is you know, subject has been identified by let me find it. Subject has been identified as a gang member by a reliable informant or source.
Wow.
So not only because you're hanging out with somebody that's a gang member, you be documented, but here's another thing is that one of your friends or somebody you know can say, "Oh yeah, I see. Yeah, he's banging."
Right.
And
or somebody that don't like you.
Right, exactly, and get you documented, or just want to get in good or get off whatever trouble they are in with the police. They'll say that, and so here's some of the ways they can document. Subject been admitted to being a gang member. Subject been arrested with no gang members for offenses consistent with gang activity, and that could be you have drugs on you or anything like that. Subject has been identified as a gang member by a reliable informant servant. Subject has been identified as a gang member by an untested informant. So you have reliable and untested informant. So they go by anything. Anybody can say that you're a gang member. And so when you have, and then here's another one. Subject has been seen affiliating with documented gang. That's the one I was trying to find earlier for Mr. Spittle. Has been seen affiliating with documented gang members. And so that's what, when you got pulled over those couple of times, that's what they were saying, that you were affiliating with a gang member. Now, here's the sad part to this is that, and I want to ask both of you about this. Start with you, Mr. Spittle. Did anyone ever come and sit down and explain to you? Sit down and explain to you the type of behavior and some of the things, people that you hang out with, and things that you're doing could get you documented as a gang member?
No one has never told me that before, before it already happened. After it happened.
Then they say, "Oh, oops, you're a documented gang member. This is why." What about you, Miss Harvey?
No, I mean, they're not going to tell you that. They want you to be a documented gang member just so they can continue to, criminalize your community and lock you up and use enhancements and continue to send you through the system. So they're not going to tell you. They're supposed to.
Right. And so here's another one. Of course, this one to get a person in trouble if you've been displaying gang symbols or hand signs, throwing up those type of things can get you in trouble. Subject has been seen frequenting gang areas. Now, if I live in an area that's been documented as a gang area, what you want me to do?
Every
if I'm going to the store where they hanging out at, what do you want me to do? Or if I happen to see my friend, I stop the car and get out and talk to him. Hey, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm supposed to be free to do whatever I want to do as long as I'm not breaking any laws or committing any crimes. Right. But because you see me associating with them and talking with them, now you want to document me as a gang member. Subject has been seen wearing gang dress. Colors is colors. Like the model your dad gave was just a color.
It's just a color.
It's just a color.
Right.
But a lot of times they want to document you because of the color you had on.
Right.
You had on red, burgundy. You had on green,
Right.
gray. Red. I mean, you can't wear no color. With
gotta
the
wear
gray that I
pink.
got on now, I'll be documented as
You
gay.
wear pink. Or yellow.
Exactly. The way they have it set up now, no blue, none of that.
Right.
And so that's crazy there. And subjects are known to have gang tattoos or in custody classification interview. And so those are some of the things that they use to document a gang member. So with the time that we have left, I want to ask you, and I begin with you, Mr. Harvey, what can we do to reform this system?
Well, in my opinion, the community got to come together, and I'm learning now about the Asian community. I just have found out, Pastor Bowser, when you were talking about that 50% of the people on Cal gangs are in Mira Mesa,
right?
And that's an Asian community. That's crazy. So I'm glad that you kind of be educated us on that. So now we need to start coming together up there as well,
right?
And bringing this gang criteria to light, because it's unconstitutional. If people look up the gang criteria, and then next to the gang criteria, I want people to look up the First Amendment right. If you look at the First Amendment right and look at your gang criteria, you'll see that it's definitely unconstitutional. I mean, there's nothing in there that justifies what they're doing is right. If I can't wear a color, if I can't associate with friends, then the constitutional right has been stripped. I mean, our First Amendment right has been stripped from us.
Right.
So in order for us to contest this and to get something done, communities, religious leaders, churches, people that are in the community that's on the ground, everybody has to come together, because I think that's the foundation of criminalizing of cultures, specifically Black, Brown, and the Asian community. We have to fight this. I mean, that's killing our kids. That's killing our communities. Fathers are being going to jail for long sentences. So we have to. Communities have to come together, and I think that's the only way we can beat this and shed light on this gang criteria. For
sure. Now, Mr. Biddle, as he was talking about, as far as in your community, 50% of juveniles that are documented gang members are from Mira Mesa, and so on. Why do you think that is? Do you have any idea of what's going on there?
Probably because Mira Mesa is not like a violent area, but a lot of like small crimes. So I guess like they would want all the youth to be more surveillant, have more surveillance on them and stuff.
So yeah, and that's a good point that he's bringing out about the surveillance, because when you want, if you criminalize a community, you got to have it under surveillance so that you can be able to violate people's rights by stopping their cars, putting them under investigations, getting them on probation, then being able to get into their houses and the whole shebang, and having them documented as gang members and so on. And so, even with the pat downs of cars and houses and things like that, if you document as a gang member, you're a gang member, so we can check for guns, or we can check for this or that, that's in line with gang crimes and so on. And so, hey, we're just getting started with this, but, as usual, we always run out of time, and maybe one of these days we'll lift our show to 2 hours so we have more time to have a discussion on this, because we're just getting into the reform piece of it, dealing with the criminalization. We need to reform the criminal justice system. We need to make sure and deal with these enhancements, because it most definitely affect people of color. And that's why we want these laws changed, because it's unfair. It's applied unfairly. And so we thank you for tuning in today to What's Happening Now on KBLKradio.com. And tune in next week again to What's Happening Now, 9 o'clock a.m. on Sundays. All right, God bless you, and we hope you tune in next week.